Hey, good morning, good morning, good morning. Happy Thursday. It is Thursday, March the 26th. Thank you for joining me for another episode in this series. Wow, there is something in my eye. Great timing. This is what I thought at first was a part two series where I was just going to talk about my journey from Chicago to New York and then forward from there. But it's actually going to turn into a three-part series because I want to document my journey of how I got into publishing from Chicago to New York and then New York to Charlotte. And then the third part will be from Charlotte to Minnesota, where I currently live. So let's dive right into it. If you watch the first episode, then you will know about all the books that I love, the books that I read in middle school and junior high and in high school, and how those books had a heavy emphasis on spiritual warfare and deliverance and prayer, intercession, inner healing, those kind of things. I talked about Mary Kay Baxter, Derek Prince, Win Worley. Noel Gibson, Frank and Ida Mae Hammond, like all of those kind of books. So those were some of the books that I read growing up because of the church that I went to and because of my pastor, John Eckhart. He would recommend those books, and I would read anything that he would recommend. And then he started publishing um, his own prayer books. And so then I got auto buys of his book. He became an auto buy author for me immediately once he started publishing. Um, Self-publishing and traditional publishing is just, it's a thing. It's an auto buy thing. So you know that from the first episode that I was rejected, denied from Pace University when I applied the first time, and then I was accepted provisionally while on a mission trip in China. And so the mission trip in China was in July. I was moving to New York in August, and so I needed a place to stay. And so, with some prayer, I was able to stay at the home that we stayed at when my friend did her album release. So, got to New York, had to pack up my things really, really quickly, decide what I was taking, what I was leaving at home in Chicago. And so then in 2024, I moved to New York. I live in the Bronx. I work in different places. I started going through job like recruiting sites, staff agencies, those kind of things. And so I had a couple different like government jobs, a couple different state jobs within my time in New York. I worked for the Office of Children and Family Services. I worked for the New York State Office of the Attorney General, like this real estate bureau, real estate finance bureau with all these different lawyers. That was really, really fun. The Office of Children and Family Services was fun because it was my first job and I was making a lot of actual mistakes and giving out telephone numbers. That was the wrong number. I remember giving out one telephone number to what I thought was the right agency. And so that agency did call, and they were like some kind of agency for maybe gay men in New York. And it was definitely not the agency that I was trying to get people to call, but the guy called and was like, "Hey, this is the blah, 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 blah agency for gay men or gay people," or something like that. And this is not, whatever it was supposed to be. So I was very, very humbled in that moment. Um, and then I can look back, I was embarrassed completely in that moment, but I can look back on it and be like, girl, but you tried your best. Like you did your best. So that counts for something. Um, and then I landed at the Office of Special Investigations with the Department of Education. That was my longest job. Everything else was, kind of 2 years or so, but this was the longest. And even during that time of 2024, master's only takes 2 years. So of course I was longer than 2 years. And so I got there in 2024. I left, I think it was like 2021 when I moved to Charlotte. And so within all those times, I only held 3 jobs and I freelanced a ton. Okay, I did not say that I got a publishing job. I freelanced a ton and had these 3 jobs in between. Um, but in between that, after I graduated in 2026, John Eckhart announced that he was going to do a writing conference. And it was going to be in Florida at the headquarters of Charisma. if you remember from the first video, I met Stephen Strange at church because they were giving John Eckhart an award. Maybe it was like 1 million books sold for Prayers That Rout Demons. And so I met him during that time. And he gave me wisdom to get a job in the industry before I got my master's. And then I did it the opposite way, which I would not change at all. I'm glad I got my master's and then got into the industry. Not that it gave me any elevation per se, because most people don't have their master's in publishing. Um, I mean, some that are coming up now do. They might have a master's in publishing. They might have gone through the New York SCPS. They might have an English degree. They might have a journalism degree. They might have a com minor in their education. But most people did not have a master's degree when I was starting out, except for like, my cohort of publishing students. Everyone wanted to be an editorial. Everyone, including myself, everyone wanted to be an editorial. There were a few people that wanted to be on the design side of things, or that wanted to be in publicity and marketing. But majority of the class, I would say maybe 80% of the class, wanted to be an editorial. And there are still some that I follow on social media that are literary agents, or that are in publicity, that are in marketing, and those that are like cover designer, interior designers, those kind of things. So, but mostly everyone, including myself, wanted to be an editorial. So 2014, I moved to New York. I'm staying there to 2021. Apostle John Eckhart has Write It in 2027. Write It conference was held in the headquarters of Charisma. So Javon Bowden was there during that time, and I was able to have a walkthrough of Charisma and saw the lay of the land and saw how things were run, and kind of saw the cubicles and the offices and all the things. Um, and that was great experience for me, because I always thought like, this is a dream. Like, I'm going to move to Florida. I'm going to work for Charisma. This is it. There's no other conversation. There's no other talking. And so I was really, really excited to once again see Javon and get the tour of Charisma, because that's where she was then. And so that was really, really exciting for me. It solidified that I absolutely want to be in publishing, maybe not Charisma, but I wanted to be in publishing. And so Write It was great. There's a lot of authors. There is a lot of conversation. There are some people that were speakers there, like Sophia Ruffin, who is now a published author. Sophia Ruffin Wilson, she was there. She spoke, prophesied, did all the things. And so that was really, really cool to now see that we are basically almost 10 years later, and some people have gone to do amazing things through that Write It conference, and how that was a catalyst for other people to get their way through. And so 2017 was that conference. It was amazing. It was wonderful. Finally saw Charisma behind the scenes offices and all the things, and that was wonderful for me. And so during that time, I had no desire to leave New York anytime soon. I felt like New York was wonderful and amazing for my 20s. By the time I hit my 30s, I was like, all right, we good. I think I had enough. Where are we going next? And so I remember thinking, I'm going to go to Florida. Duh. And I remember having a dream that I still remember to this day, because I actually recorded it and it's still in my phone. And the dream was from this guy, Kevin Leo. And in the dream, I'm talking to another woman that I know, and we're talking about her grandchildren and having this whole conversation about her grandchild, which I did not know at the time that this is the name that they were going to name, that the parents were going to name their child. I'm just like, oh, talking to so-and-so, like, how's this and how's that going? And so in the dream, the guy walks in the dream and he's like, don't move to Florida. And I'm like, now you are destroying my dreams, because that was the dream. Like, that was it. Move to Florida, work at Charisma. Even if I don't work at Charisma, I can still move to Florida and work somewhere else. There got to be another publishing company, even if Charisma isn't the thing. And so in the dream, he's like, don't move to Florida. Don't move to Florida. He didn't say don't ever move to Florida. He said don't move to Florida. And so I was like, that's sad. And so I woke up from that dream, and I think I made a Facebook status about it where I tagged the person I was talking to in the dream. And I probably didn't tag the guy, but I was just in the post talking about how he was destroying my dreams because he told me don't do the very thing that I've always wanted to do. And so, needless to say, I did not move to Florida, but I was like, Lord, where we going? Like, we got to get out of here. Like, I'm good. I'm done. Like, let's get out of here. And so, pandemic 2020 comes, all the things comes. And before that, I had a work mom at one of these jobs through the Office of Special Investigation with the Department of Education. She became my work mom. And she lived in New York, and she also had a house in North Carolina. And so we would visit back and forth New York, North Carolina. And she was like, I could see you moving to North Carolina. And I was like, no, why would I move there? Da 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 da. I have no reason to move there. And then I met a pastor. I met a pastor friend, and this is during the Clubhouse time, the app Clubhouse. And I had been on her, Clubhouse app or in her room all these times, just kind of listening to her testimony, listening to her talk about the Bible, listening to her talk about application for the Bible and reading the Bible. And she would do these, testimony times where she would do these dose of courage moments. And so I began to follow her heavily in her Bible studies, in her conversations, in her lives, like all the things. I just became obsessed, if you will, but not really. But she lived in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I remember the work mom was always saying, like, she could see me moving to North Carolina. And I was like, nope, I'm not moving to North Carolina, blah, 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 blah. Or I'm not moving to North Carolina until you retire. Then we could both move to North Carolina. Well, I didn't do that. I didn't do that at all. I decided, well, I don't need to wait that long necessarily. I could just move now. And so July, I believe, of 2021 is when I moved to North Carolina. Now, during that time in New York, even though I had those 3 different jobs during that whole span of time, I still freelanced. 2020 is when I was introduced to my now pastor. He didn't know me, and he wouldn't know me for another couple years, actually. But 2020, I was introduced to him through one of his books, The Rise of the Mackay Prophet. And that was another proofreading job opportunity that I was given, which was a godsend for me. Because in 2020, my mom and my stepfather and my aunt was all diagnosed with cancer in that same year, February and June, and then again in September for all 3 of them. And so I thought, well, Lord, surely you're not gonna take my mama. Like, you're not gonna take my auntie, you're not gonna take my mama, you're not gonna take these people. And I remember reading and proofreading The Rise of the Mackay Prophet in the hospital during the time that my mom was having her surgery, because I could hear the enemy louder than I've ever heard in my life. And it was ridiculous. Anyway, everyone is fine. But that is how I got introduced to my current pastor now through his book, The Rise of the Mackay Prophet. And then I'll talk about more in part 3 on how we got to working together further and all the introductions of that. But then I moved to Charlotte, North Carolina. Now, all this time that I was living in New York, did not have a traditional publishing job. There was no publishing company. There was no self-publishing company. I was just freelancing, proofreading, some copy editing, just, freelancing through that entire time. And then I remember, because I was leaving OSI, I had to resign because they wanted people to come back into the office because the pandemic's over, so they say. And so I had to resign from the DOE because I was moving to Charlotte, North Carolina, and I was not returning back to New York. And so I resigned. And so I spent that time of maybe August, September to December with no job, no traditional job in a sense. I was a VA for those couple months. So that was really, really good. I was a VA in Charlotte for those couple months, doing things with the pastor friend in her ministry. So that was amazing. That was really great. Had my hand in VA. And then it became December. And in December, I don't know how I found out that Penguin Random House was hiring for an editorial assistant. I literally don't remember how I found out. But I remember that we rented out an Airbnb and we were going to do like this whole mapping out our year, our strategy kind of deal. and get all the things that we needed so that we can start 2022 correctly with our vision and our goals and blah 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 blah. And so I remember being in that Airbnb and getting an email from Penguin Random House like, we would like to interview you. And so I thought, oh my goodness, they about to interview me. And so I had an interview with the editorial director, and then I had an interview with the VP, and then I had kind of a larger interview with some other people. And that was amazing. That was really exciting. I was really giddy, hopeful, like all the things. And before we left that Airbnb, I had found out that I was getting a job and that I was starting the day after MLK Day with Penguin Random House as their editorial assistant. So, first traditional publishing job right out the gate. Reminder, just after I left New York, like right after I left New York. Like in New York, wasn't nobody, checking for me. There was no jobs. I was putting in applications. Where I worked was right near Abrams Publishing. And so I walked past Abrams. I had a friend who worked at Abrams, and I was like, girl, you in the life. Like, you are living the life I want to live. And I was living the life that she wanted to live. We were just kind of passing through. The thing that I wanted to do, she was doing. The things that she wanted to do, I was doing it. And so I would go visit her at Abrams on her lunch break and be able to see the office just a tad bit, not too much. And we were just kind of crossing each other in the things that we were doing. And so I started at Penguin Random House the day after MLK Day in 2022, and I continued there through 2025. Yeah, through 2024. Wow. Yeah, through 2024. All right. This is over 15 minutes. I wanted it to be exactly at 15 minutes. I'm a little bit over. But yeah, that is how I got from Chicago to New York and then to Charlotte by provincially all of these different people and all these different conversations. And then I'll cap it at how I got accepted into Penguin Random House as the editorial assistant. And then the following Thursday, we will end this, what was supposed to be a 2-part series, into this 3-part series and talk about how I got from Charlotte to Minnesota, where I am now. So thank you for joining me for a new series on how I got into publishing. I will see you back here on Thursday to continue part 3, and I will see you here on Tuesday for the author prayer series. Have a wonderful day. Bye.